Hello everyone, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Here is the last group of this class. The material is about multimodal discourse analysis, focused on systemic functional perspective. We go to the next multimodal discourse analysis, systemic functional perspective. Here, like I heard yesterday, multimodal discourse analysis is about one more modal to analyze discourse, something like text, image, gesture, music, pictures, or actions. Here, most of my example is about text and image. Another way of explaining something like the discourse, there are 4 sets of tools for analysis. The first analysis is additional pattern in image. The second analysis is interpersonal pattern. The third analysis is concern the textual organization of the image. The fourth one is layout. We go to the first is additional meanings construct by visual image. Additional meaning is interpreted by a visual image. In additional term, the main focus of the visual image is on the entity or activity. An image that focuses on the entity that classifies or arranges its parts. Maybe activity focus image interpret a single activity. We can say it's simple. Or sequence of activity, we can say that is complex. And the image may also have secondary focus that the elements of aware of. Here I will have symbols, the image. They are not iconic or symbolic, but represent a category of one or more criteria. Example is the relationships between crowds and government officials on stage. We can analyze that by additional why, and we have perspective like leaders and their country based on their relative positions, maybe in bottom, top, and center, like the government in Indonesia. They are in up, in middle, and in bottom. Next is interpersonal meanings enacted by visual image. In terms of assessments, sometimes we have our personal meanings when we see the image. And here I will explain that image can engrave feelings. For example, when someone cries or smiles, they can evoke an appreciation of things through the relative effectiveness. We cannot say that the one is sad, there is something they do, it's bad. We cannot say. Maybe it's about happiness, and then they cry. Here, the engagement is the second example. With viewers can also vary in image and of course feelings too. Maybe rewards. Judgment can also be amplified and removed. We go to the next one in our textual organization and image text relations. In order to interpret the semantic relationship of image with text, we need to introduce some dimensions of textual organization and image text relationship. Here, Kreis and Van Lowen suggest to form textual organization for image. They are polarized and centered. On the one hand, there is polarization along the horizontal or vertical axis. For horizontally polarized image, the left side is closure give and the right is the new organization comparable. Here I talk more about a margin, how it can be good when the readers and the image and also text that have a meaning. Here, Kars and Lowen suggest the terms ideal and real, where ideal can be categorized as more general or abstract category. Maybe image and also layout are organized by their left, right, top, down, center, margin, X, and by the relative size of their elements. Image relation include expansions and projection.
Okay, next, I will explain about multimodality in biology textbooks by Liboku. So the reason why we discuss about this paper because we will learn about how to analyze the schematic drawing and statistical graph. So here is framework for analysis the schematic drawing. If we can see here, this is the framework adapted from Atoli. Is about a function and a system. So what we'll analyze is about a function and a system. In the unit like work, episodes, figure, and member. And then here is the representational. So the representational here is related to the ideational meaning, and the model here is related to interpersonal meaning, and the compositional is related to the textual meaning. I will give you small knowledge about the schematic drawing. So schematic drawing is an image designed to simply describe some real or fictional process. In a biological schematic drawing, case is not important thing. If we know that in a picture or in a figure, case is important thing, but the important thing in the schematic biological text is labeling. Why labeling? Because the importance of recognizing the steps of the components of an organism and study why it can be labeled as such by scientific community. Okay, so next, the framework for analysis the statistical graph is seems similar like the schematic drawing, but if we can see in the unit or the function here, in the first in schematic is about work, but this is the graph, and then for the last it's not member but part. Okay, so for the other is same, and I give a small explanation about the statistical graph. So statistical graph is everything that derived from data tables. Everything that derived from the data tables are linguistic and mathematical expression between a set of variables. In a graph, usually and generally use the x-axis horizontal coordinate and y-axis vertical coordinates. X-axis horizontal coordinates, this is an independent variable, and y-axis coordinate, this is a dependent variable. So the coordinate here becomes a form of space limitation. Then, in a graphic, statistical graph construct theoretical object, and the representative meaning of the statistical graph is more specific because it relates only to the numeric between the two sets of variables. Existing visual must operate by direct command without sign or true nuance. Mean that nuance, like there are no different color or quality in a visual map, like image or picture. The reading pad in introductory text. According to O'Halloran, line reading in multisemiotic text is not linear from left to right or top to bottom, but follows some specific sequence. So read multisemiotic text is a different with reading usually text. And there are two aspects in reading pad. For the first, intersemiotic aspects. Intersemiotic aspect make the reader will shift his attention from one semiotic to another. So the attention of the reader will be shift or will be moved from one semiotic to another semiotic. And then intrasemiotic aspect. Intrasemiotic aspect makes the reader will move from one component to another in one semiotic model. So it's still in one semiotic model, but it will be moved in another component. Here is the results of the analysis the steps in schematic drawing that relate with the interpersonal meaning, editorial meaning, and textual meaning. For the first, I'm sorry because I could not find the original picture of mitosis cell divisions. So I just snapshot from the book. Okay, here the explanation. For the step A, the title. The front is bold and the caption number is green, which aims to attract the reader because it is clear and attractive. The title doesn't have an interpersonal meaning. The title is a means of information or a measure of what will be read. Additionally, the title serves to identify what makes it the equivalent of an identified clause. Step C, mitosis. There are two steps in mitosis, C2 arow and C3 circumscribes. I mean that there are two steps will be analyzed in step C mitosis, arow and circumscribes. So C2 arow. Interpersonally, the single-headed arrow is a command. It is focused in the direction of the arrow from top to the bottom. Additionally, the arrow serves to indicate the process and direction of movement, change or development of various intermediate base between the circles above and below it. Then C2 circle shapes. Additionally, the circles serve to represent a portrait of certain stage in cell division. Its additional meaning is indicated by the change in the shape of the side of the pink shaded area and the diagonal orientation of the two pairs of length representing the chromosomes. The additional time in this step is the drastic change that takes place in the nuclear chromosomes. Textually, or the composition, is in the form of color cohesion and contrast, which enable the reader to recognize the similarities and differences in additional and interpersonal meanings. The textual organization is contribute to the cells represented on the micrograph. And the next is step E, caption. Black and white text stands out less visual. Normal font size and type, as well as shorter font. It gives a clue that the text should be read later in reading order. Additionally, it presents a possessive identifier relationship and a state identifier relationship that each of the verbal groups is aware of, namely consists of and followed by. Visual image in biological text must be fed categorically by linguistic source. The value as a specialization or an icon of relevance and also have to establish biological taxonomic terms. This is the relationship between PSM, mitosis, and cytogenesis. Step G, cell structure. So we will analyze the G to the label. In G to the label, non-prominent shapes, small fonts without shading and capitalization. So additionally, this step identifies the main components of a cell or cell nucleus. Okay, the next is analysis of a statistical graph. Okay, the reading page on the statistical graph of T in a cells involve a verbal and a visual closure from the main text to the question, then to the problem section of the question and a relevant main text, and ending to the graph. Additionally, the device on the graph show visually the experimental results of the distribution of cells with DNA contained in a growing cell population. The X values in the X value is the DNA contained per cell. The Y value is the number of cells with a specific DNA content. A graph is also the visual equivalent of a group linguistic relational process that go through their cycles. The graphs show the conceptual relationship and provides a theoretical relationship between the two variables. The additional meaning of the graph lies in the graph and cannot be expressed effectively by verbal text or mathematical equations. In reading statistical graph, the reader needs to understand the question and what is the problem in the question. Then the reader needs to understand the main text that has been read. Then reanalyze the graph according to the problem. So for the example, like the question, which is the longest phase of the cell cycle in this population of cells? I will repeat again. So, which is the longest phase of the cell cycle in this population of cells? So, for answer these questions, the reader needs to interpret the divergent semiotic metaphor. That is, the reader needs to know how to interpret the frequency graph. So the answer from the question is A is the highest, indicate that the number of cells with this DNA content, that is cells at G phase, is the large. This further suggests that G is the longest phase of the cell cycle, assuming that the cells were selected on a random basis.